sky upon the sea, green, the taste of dill, memories of a dream, the burst of flaming roses, red, passionate and free, cream, a neutral place, we're finding common ground, the warmth of mauve, comfort and calm, gold, a place where dreams are glowing, colors of the heart.
I am so happy to let you know, through abstract art behind the scenes, about a phenomenal woman, an artist and a mystic, Hilma af Klint. Now, Hilma was very unusual in a certain way that many of us may not have witnessed in our own lives. She had very little, if no, ego. I mean, it's not to say that she didn't have any ego, but in terms of being an artist and wanting to be known as an artist, it really wasn't that important to her because she had a higher calling. I'm going to give you a little bit of a feeling of her upbringing first. Hilma was the daughter of an admiral. She was born in 1862, one of 5 children. She had a younger sister, but otherwise she felt like one of the younger ones in the family. She was very fortunate in that she really lived during a time when there was something called theosophy that was developed. It was a type of spirituality, or sometimes they called it spiritism. And the woman who developed it was Helena Blavatsky. Now, during this particular time period, before the 1900s, this philosophy was being widespread through Sweden, through various countries. And the most amazing aspect about it is that it included women, not only as part of the society, but to be leaders of the Theosophical Society. And what that gave Hilma at a very young age was this idea that women could be leaders and that artists weren't just famous because they were men or just looked at because they were men at the time. So this was 1862 that she was born. We're talking before the 1900s. And many people didn't know about Hilma. And the reason they didn't is because she decided to not show her abstract art, which was a very spiritual kind of art, until, well, I wouldn't say that she showed it, but she wouldn't allow her nephew to show her art until 20 years after her death, because she did not think that people would appreciate or understand her art. She was raised in the country. She enjoyed wealth with her family. They lived very, very high on the hill. And she really enjoyed that. She loved botany when she was growing up because her family was very much into mathematics, science, and she really got into those fields, as well as finding that she had a real penchant for drawing and painting. She studied for quite a while until she was about 20, 22. She studied in high school, or what they would have called high school in Sweden. And eventually she enrolled in the Royal Academy of the Arts in Stockholm, Sweden. She gradually gained recognition, and an amazing thing, they gave her a lease on a studio of her own, or actually she may have shared it with one or two other people, but they gave her this studio through the Academy as an award. And this is a woman at the time. So I was just flabbergasted to hear that this woman had gained a certain kind of acclaim at such a young age. She was in her 20s. She came from a Protestant family, and ultimately she became a Lutheran, and she was into theosophy as well. So she combined a lot of her spiritual beliefs. She basically felt that higher powers could come into play when she painted and she drew. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about how that started to happen for her. First of all, I'm going to find the date here of when this happened. 1879, her younger sister was 10 years old, and she died of pneumonia. Now, Hilma was taking care of her, and she was very much affected by the loss of her sweet sister. Her interest in spirituality started to really develop at that time. And after she had graduated from the academy, she was working on her own. She was making paintings that were very naturalistic. That's when she ended up moving into these realms of working with the spirits, in a sense, or spirit, in her more abstracted work. But let's start with some share screens here of what she looked like, some of the work that she worked on when she was very, very young, just in her early 20s, before she got into a very beautiful group of women that studied this theosophy together. So here are pictures of Hilma. I would say that she was probably just 17 to 20 years old on the left, and on the right, how old do you think she looks here? Anybody?
About 45.
Yeah, it looks about that, doesn't it? She looks like she's had a pampered, beautiful life, the way she's dressed, and she looks very calm here. This is a portrait that she made of herself. I have no date on this. It's in watercolor. Now, when she went to school, she learned how to be a naturalist type painter, and she became so successful with these kinds of works that she took on commissions from different people, and basically wives or children, couples. She made her living through these commissions. And also beautiful landscapes in oil. I really love this one here. This one's called Spring Landscape. It's approximately 13 by 39 inches, and it was made in 1892. So we're getting a sense of how old she is here. That's 30 years old, which means that she was working on this natural type style for many, many years. So even though she also started working with abstraction, she definitely loved working with this kind of style. This is a watercolor made in 1902, streaming the Swedish, this is called Streaming the Swedish Forest Landscape. And this is only 6 by 9 inches. She also did these botanical drawings beautifully because her family was into plants and botany and learning about science. In 1879, when her younger sister died of pneumonia, she decided that she would get into the idea of spiritual communication with the high masters. Now, she had formed a group previously to that, right after her academy days, a group of women whom she called Dom Femme, or basically what it would be called in English is the Five. So there were 5 women, and together they would enter trance-like states to perform intricate seances. When she was with this group, they would set up a beautiful feeling together in a room that had an altar with Christian symbols, with roses, peonies, candles. A real sense of the seance was taking place there. And they would do something called automatic writing or drawing, which meant that they would write or draw, sometimes possibly with a non-dominant hand, and inculcate or bring within spirits of high masters from the universe to help them understand what symbols these masters wanted them to develop in their art. Right here at the bottom, we have a notebook. And it looks to me like this could be something related to the automatic drawings, where she wasn't necessarily looking at the paper, but letting different emotions come through as they were meditating. They may have had music on. I really don't know the exact way it all happened, just that I learned enough to see and understand what could have been going on in that room. This is a psychogram, and it's similar to a Ouija board. So they possibly use something like this to help them with different ideas and creating thoughts to put down on paper in the form of writing. They also had their own notebooks, most of them, and Hilma was incredibly meticulous. So up here I have a whole bunch of pages that are from her notes. Can you imagine being so organized with notes that it looks ready to be published? Hilma was studying the work of artist, writer, and philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe from Germany. And he had all kinds of ideas about what could be a symbol for what. Some of them were that blue meant feminine, or yellow was masculine, and the two together could represent nature when they make green. So I thought I would share some of these symbols that Hilma put in one of her notebooks. So in a lot of her work, you see much of what is on this blue page. Development and evolution, the snail and the spiral. Femininity, the eyelet. You see the eyelet on the part of the sail that holds the sail together. So femininity is lily and blue. Masculinity, the hook, the rose, yellow. Matter is W. Spirit is U. And there are lots of letters that she used in her art. So I imagine that these higher powers helped her to understand what this language could be, and then she worked with those symbols. Towards unity and completion, when you put two circles together and overlap them, you get an almond shape. And that almond shape is what that means, unity and completion. The ethereal and completion, the swan. She made a series called The Swan. And she made a series called The Dove, which could mean Holy Spirit and love. In the 1600s, there was some tantric art found, and it was from Rajasthan, a northern state in India. This particular piece I'm putting up because it has a lot of geometric ideas on it. And the idea of tantric art at that point was not about sex at all. And that's what we tend to think of when we think of tantric sex or tantric anything in the US, because for whatever reason, that's what became popular. However, during the 1600s, this particular kind of art was used as a meditation, a way to fulfill this wholeness, linking humans and the universe. The Sanskrit word yantra, which sounds a lot like tantra or tantra, derives from the root yam, meaning to sustain or hold. So most Indian critics, they see these images, these circles and symbols, rims of color, inverted triangles, spirals, different kinds of flat planes, as symbolizing tantric kinds of meditation. They don't view it as abstract art. That was taken on many years later to be art that was, in some minds, to be looked at as something physical, and in other people's minds to be looked at as something physically on the page and something spiritual at the same time. Most of the artists who made abstract art in the very beginning of the 1900s, they had a spiritual feeling about their work. And yet it might have been a little bit removed from the meditation type sessions that were done using this type of work that was made in the 1600s. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of that background before we move to the abstract work of Hilma. This is one of the first in a series that she created. And before I go into what this is all about specifically, I'd like to share a little about what happened during one of the seances. She's with her group of 4 friends, and they are eliciting energy from the universe. And at some point, the higher masters say to them, I want you to build something really amazing with your art using our higher powers to help you facilitate it. And it's going to be an altar in a temple or works for a temple that will ultimately be built. Well, most of the women were thinking, there is no way I'm going to do this for a higher power because it'll suck all of my energy and I won't have anything left for myself. Hilma was different, however. She said to herself, this is my calling, I imagine. And so she started on many different series, and this is between 1906 and 1915. And she would create smaller and larger works, some of them huge, that were supposed to be for a temple that would ultimately be built. But because she didn't want to share her abstract art with the public, it was securely kept separate from the world until, I would say, 20 years after she died, because her nephew decided to share it with others in Sweden and different places in the world, little by little. And it was only in 1986 that the first show at the Guggenheim in New York was presented of Hilma's work. And believe it or not, I did not know about her for the last, I just found out about her over the last 5 years. So it's crazy that I didn't know about her. we all should have known about her during our entire lifetime. This particular series is called Primordial Chaos, and most of these works were made between 1906 and 07. I don't have their exact dimensions, but I know they are fairly small. It is indicated that they may mean the beginning of the world. And I'm going to read you a quote from Hilma about this series. The pictures were painted directly through me, without any preliminary drawings, and with great force. I had no idea what the paintings were supposed to depict. Nevertheless, I worked swiftly and surely, without changing a single brushstroke. So I'm going to show you a few from this series, and then we can open it up for some talking. This is number 16. And this is number 17. So let's take a look again at each of these. And let's make a couple comments about what we're seeing and maybe how they're different and maybe from the other ones, or is there anything that's coming to you? Please keep your comments brief and allow many people to speak.
Hi, my name's Ray, and
Hey, Ray, hi.
hi, she is my favorite artist. I feel like she is like alien. The whole three pieces is like very, now surreal to me.
Surreal, yes. I get that.
Mhm.
Beautiful.
There's an underwater feel.
What does blue connote if it's supposed to be feminine according to Goethe, right? But what does blue connote in other ways?
Heidi here. I think spaciousness and sky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It looks like birds. It's primordial. It feels like maybe the first life kind of coming out of
Right.
the meeting of these two
Colors.
curves creates life. Yeah,
And the snail
the snail is what I meant.
is part of that too. Mm-hmm.
Because you were talking about the masculine and the feminine. I don't know if that's it or not, but
Yeah, well, the yellow is the masculine and the blue is the feminine, according to Goethe.
To me, hi, I almost see fire, but the colors are opposite. We see
Right, there's
blues
a
and
lot of-
yellows and greens, but I look at this and maybe it's because it's radiating life, but I see kind of fire and flames.
Yeah, definitely. Let's look at a couple more here and the differences. So this one has a spiral. What can the spiral connote and what does the circle connote?
It feels like energy to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's also infinity, the spiral.
Yeah, it also feels like electricity to me.
Mhm.
yeah.
Like there's a current or something like that inside.
I think immediately of chromosomes and
Ah,
that part of nature.
beautiful.
It looks like the path of something rising into the heavens or something. It's spiraling up into what's above.
Mm-hmm. And as it's doing that, do you notice that the sky behind looks like a radial quality? Like it has a center with all of the lines going out in a radial fashion like a flower?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's inviting it in to that center. You know, at that time, what was happening is there was infrared light, X-rays, various things being discovered in science. And what the theosophists wanted to do is combine the idea of science and religion, bring it together as one, and don't make them so opposed to each other. And I feel that Hilma, because she had the background of science with her family and her upbringing, and then her art started to really develop, she kept bringing ideas that brought, she brought science and the spirituality together in her work. Let's go to another one here. This is very different, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
What happens to the mood in this one?
It's more peaceful to me. Centered and peaceful.
Yeah. Everybody knows what Eros is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the love. I don't know what the other symbols mean. Could anybody else guess?
I think they said earlier that W stands for, one stands for body and the other stands for spirit, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But the idea of the circle to me implies whole. There's a wholeness. It's very comforting to me. Let's go to the next series. These were very small. And the next series was quite large. In fact, these are called the 10 largest. That was how she described these paintings. They were really huge. This series, Hilma attributed to the exploration of the human life cycle, from childhood to youth to adulthood and old age.
Mm-hmm.
So these works were made, I think 10 of them in 1907. They were actually large sheets of paper later glued onto canvas. So let's look at these different ones. I do know a few things, and that is that this one had to do with childhood, and same with the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one had to do with youth, a person's youth, and finally, adulthood. So I'd like to bring up a discussion about this idea. What is happening here with these? You could ask me to put up any one of them and talk about it.
Julie, I don't know if I have an answer to that question, but two thoughts come to mind. One is that they all seem to have a sort of a feminine quality to them compared to, I mean, they're roundish shapes, they're
Right.
and there's a kind of a growth in them.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thought is that looking at Swedish folk art and the way they painted furniture, to me, a lot of this is a variation on the flowers and nature that they put on the decoration on their furniture back at that time and older in the 1800s.
Oh, that's really great to know, John. I really appreciate that because you're coming from Sweden and knowing, or your ancestry is from there, knowing all about this really helps to inform the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Mm.
Any other thoughts about what we're seeing as we move from childhood to adulthood?
Well, I think the circular, earlier, the first two pieces you showed with the circles are very contained. This one here, and but that little bit of line starting to radiate out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one, you just, the next in the series, like this is very contained, but right here we see this line starting to ooze out and just like make loops and but so it's like this peaceful containment, maybe the womb, and just like a circle and being safe and contained and compartmentalized, and then just kind of expanding out into the space, I guess.
I
represents
love
getting
that way of
older.
analyzing it. And also the idea that the line is part of something like the snail on the left here,
Mm-hmm.
and then the yellow line keeps moving outward. It's like the attachment of the snail to the large circle is like the womb or a place of real comfort, but then there's a stretching out to explore the world. And let's look at the last one about that theme of being not as insular. Do you feel less insular in this one or no?
This one feels like grounded to me. So the one before that feels sort of more yang. The first two feel like gardens to me,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very feminine. And then the orange one is like more yang colors and like also like coming out. There's a lot of energy, and sort of expression. And then the last one, to me, sort of feels like it's grounded and it's sort of also blossoming. So it's kind of like as an adult, you're grounded, but you're also like then giving life.
Beautiful, beautiful idea. Do you know, I want to say something about the composition in each of these. Do you feel at all that you're moving in some kind of a circle, or do you feel like you're moving, like jumping from one form to another? What do you feel?
Yeah, sort of moving from, all except for the third one, I feel like it's coming up from the bottom, up toward the top. This one, I feel like it's coming in from the right and sort of moving at you.
So basically, there is a sense of movement through them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a sense of coming from the bottom, moving upward. And yet, there are a lot of places in these works where you have a feeling of jumping from one form to the next to see them. And that's called a meander composition. So in some ways, I get the feeling of moving around the circle with the lines and all the similar colors that I follow in a circle upward, but then I also jump from form to form.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of that going on. So how about one last comment of this before I move to the next series?
It appears to me that some of the forms are merging from one thing into the next thing.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of merging going on in all of these pictures, I think.
Totally.
Mhm.
Julie,
Hmm.
the picture of the adult, this seems to me quite different from the others. It seems more contained and in a way thoughtful and focused.
Yeah.
They all seem to have botanical themes.
You know what's going on with this one that makes it more that way from my point of view?
Mhm.
Is that it's very vertical
Ah,
and horizontal.
both.
Look at the angles in this. This is all going on a diagonal.
Mm,
You see the diagonals?
yeah.
And this one has a little bit of that restful quality on the bottom, but there's a lot of diagonals. But when we get to that last one, it's clearly very standing up to attention and kind of formal. There's a little more of a formal quality in a sense.
And was that a comment on her part about what it's like to be an adult? Was that-
Maybe. We don't know what she meant by it.
Hey, thanks.
But I'll say that I want to read another quote from her for a minute here. The very first quote that I read was that she was letting these forces come through her and not even thinking much on her own at all. But with time, in these kinds of paintings here, she said, it was not the case that I was to blindly obey the high lords of the mysteries, but that I was to imagine that they were always standing by my side. And what's so beautiful about that is that she learned from these masters, let them come in, and then started to trust her own instincts more and more about what she wanted to create. So I'm going to go to the next one here. This series is the Evolution series. And I really can't tell you exactly whether this is the beginning of the world or something else. We will just have to interpret for ourselves. And I'm going to show you a few of these. They're more complex in terms of bringing some surrealistic elements in with abstraction.
Mhm.
So I'm showing you 3 of these. And let's just take a look at the first for a little bit. The feeling of a flower and the snail again.
Mhm.
Any thoughts or feelings about this one? How it makes
So
you feel?
Julie, I kind of see wombs with babies inside or something.
Mhm. It'd be like that. It's like an egg, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's like a plate almost.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Right, right.
Mhm.
It could be a little phallic.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that if that's where your mind is. Yeah.
That's where certain minds are.
Julie, why is it 7 of them, not 8 or 6? Is there any special meaning for
Oh,
the?
the reason is because I could only find certain ones on the internet, and we don't
Uh-huh.
have time to look at all 20 in each series. So,
Oh, no,
so
I'm talking about the plate, inside the plate. This
oh,
is
inside the plate.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I just serious. I mean, curious about what is the 7 of those. Like I don't know how to describe it.
Fingers or whatever.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 6, 7.
Or something else. So actually, I don't know what 7 could mean, but I would look it up at some point and see if the number 7 meant anything with, in theosophy or,
Well,
you
the
know,
7 days are, 7 days of creation or 6
that could
days
be.
plus a day of rest.
So we have lots of things going on here.
Mm.
Is there any one thing that sticks out for anyone?
The snake.
Yeah, the snake.
What does a snake symbolize?
It's kind of evil. It's temptation. It's danger. It's devouring.
But isn't it interesting how the snake is encircling that entire middle section that looks very peaceful?
Mhm.
Plus,
And
it's
then-
upside down. I don't know why the head would be upside down.
Well, the other things are right side up, the people on the left and right. So, and this is the way it's supposed to be shown. So I'm not sure.
Maybe it's about Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden and
could
the
be.
snake tempting them.
It could be. Let's look at the next one and see if there's anything very strong that comes out from this one.
The pentagon.
The Pentagon.
I see hearts, lots of hearts. The hearts are in the center. So it's the core of, I think,
Yeah.
the core of what she's trying to convey. And very soft colors, but then also stark contrasts too.
Very unusual, right?
Yeah.
I really enjoy hanging with this one and looking at all the different pieces. And it's one of those ones that you could look at for a long time and notice different things. Like on the right, in that blue petal, there are animals that are doing something together and they're creating a heart between them that's blue.
Yeah.
I love the way she takes the colors on either side. They're all the same colors, but she uses more gold and less blue on the right, and more blue and less gold on the left. And they're similar shapes, sort of swirly, but yeah, her palette is beautiful.
It's beautiful and unusual, I think.
Yes, it is.
So I'm going to go to the next series here. I'm only going to show 2 from this series. It was made in 1913.
Wow.
And between 1913 and 15, she worked on this series, and it's called Tree of Knowledge. This is number 1, and then the next one is number 5. Very different. I do
There's
notice something going on here that reminds me of DNA,
Yeah.
the DNA spiral.
I see a
That's what you
snake
see.
in this one too.
There's snakes in all of them.
Yeah.
No, not all of them. But
Well,
a lot
the tree of knowledge again is the Garden of Eden. It's kind of like she's got a theme of that going. And especially if there's a snake in there again.
But where's the tree?
I see the trunk of the tree is in the center, vertical. And then the top of the tree is kind of a dome shape.
Would you say that the rays are like the tree
The branches,
skeleton?
maybe? Yeah, or branches.
Or branches,
possibly.
I mean.
Yeah.
The rays remind me that it looks like a fountain on the top.
Yes.
And the rays, I think, are coming out from the fountain.
Isn't that
Beautiful.
a chalice? Isn't that a chalice?
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's sort of like there are different levels, so it's almost like knowledge is like building on itself.
I love that.
I was going to say this is more organic than many of them in the sense that it's more like her botanical drawings. That kind of organic.
Yes.
The way a botanical drawing is put together and the kind of shading and detail that's used, plus the growth itself, the trunk, the branches, the stem, the roots, the leaves, the blossom at the top. That's much more like her botanical prints.
So she's using her background in botany and in drawing botanical drawings, you know, or painting botanical paintings to inform this. Let's look at the next one for a minute and the difference.
There's still rays in a chalice.
Yes.
It almost could be up in the sky and there's a little satellite there. I know it's probably too early for satellites, but
right.
It's kind of like a yin and yang, you know, it's sort of like a yin and yang symbol in the sense of the dark gray and the white exchanging places. And so there's some of the dark and the light and light and the dark.
Right.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I noticed in the other one, and I was not paying attention to the rest, is this field of gray and this darker blue on top, is that part of this drawing or is it the background?
The horizontal line on the top is the share screen that makes a little shape.
That makes that shape gray.
Yeah, that's just the share screen when you're working with Zoom.
Okay. It looks nice with her work.
Oh, that's good. All right, I'm going to move on here. This next series is the Swan series, and Swan means transcendence. Okay? I could not help myself. I must have 6 or 7 of these, or at least 6. So, because they were so amazing, and it was hard for me to believe that she moved to such abstraction that to me didn't even indicate a swan over time. So these started in 1914, went through 1915. This particular one, I don't even know the date on it, but it was still considered the Swan series. And we're just going to look through for a little bit and notice that this is, I would just describe this as the one with the 2 circles. It's number 8. This one I describe as having almost like an hourglass feeling to it, number 13. This one is number 17. Almost looks like a record. And this is number 18. I'm not sure exactly how many she made in this series, but isn't it fascinating just to notice that she started with this yin yang idea of the black with white on it and white with black on it, which is a beautiful image. And then these other ones are quite different. But they still are called the Swan series. And if we think of transcendence, these images to me are about, especially this one, I just feel a very transcending kind of feeling in this one, which is the hourglass or number 13. Not as much in those, but any thoughts on any of the ones in this series?
I love. They seem very sciencey.
Sciencey?
Yeah.
Well,
I love the first one with the actual swans. It's quite beautiful. And
that's definitely organic.
Yeah, and also it's sort of like the black swan might be sort of, you know, more evil or something dark or shadowy, and the white swan is more good and heavenly, something like that. And they're different parts of the self or the ego, or, you know, I think it's easy to come up with interesting interpretations, or they're, you know, the dark and the light are kissing, or they're sharing energy, or, you know, so I think, to me, this is, I guess I'm still drawn to more realistic,
which is fine.
But I can, once I saw that one, I could sort of see a little bit of a, you know, some resonance of this image in the following few images, you know, but without this swan image, it would be hard for me to see a swan and swans in this if I hadn't seen the first image that had.
Yeah, I don't even know that we have really swans in any of these other images. Maybe what happened is she started with the idea of swan and then moved with that thought of transcendence, which was the symbol of swan.
It reminds me a little bit of M.C. Escher. When M.C. Escher makes these swans that turn into other things, and it does seem to have she does seem to have a reoccurring theme of this yin and yang, where the light, you're seeing the light and the darkness in many, many different ways, and the darkness in the light.
And it feels like there's a unity in the opposites. There's somehow or other you have to have both of them to create a whole.
Right, like a sense of balance.
Yes.
And also inclusion, like including everything. So for transcendence, you can't just leave out the lower, like baser feelings. It has to be all included.
Right.
The colors in that one with the orange background are gorgeous. Almost reminds me of Rothko or something. That glowing salmon, whatever it is.
Yeah.
With the blue contrast, is just gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. And just the choice of color against the stark contrast of black and white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really unusual and beautiful.
She's been compared to Kandinsky, and I can see the similarity in some ways, like the geometric shapes and so on.
Well, I think Kandinsky wanted to be considered the first abstract artist, but he can't have that title, and neither can Hilma, because those abstract tantric art pieces, those were in the 1600s.
Even the ancient people from thousands of years ago, when they did rock carving, some of those.
Right, even in the caves, they did some abstract work. This next one is part of the Swan series.
It looks like 3 parallel planes that you're seeing at an angle.
Yeah.
You know, this quality of seeing it both flat and also in depth also was in that one, Julie, that you described as that you could keep looking at it. There was one of the earlier ones that you look at it flat, the tree, you look at it flat, but then you can also look at it as if you're looking down at it at the same time. Yeah. Yeah.
So that optical illusion of space. Well, I just love seeing what she's doing with the work, and the longer she's working with the abstraction, the more she doesn't actually work with the masters working through her specifically, maybe they are in a certain way, but she's taking on a lot of her own feeling here. This is the Dove series. And this first one is called Dove number 1, made in 1915. And I'm going to show you all of the Dove series for a bit here. Now, this is interesting. Where's the dove? This is number 12. And there are people in the center, by the way. I know it's small, but it looks like 2 figures to me.
Those are astrological signs around the.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you feel about that once I've gone through all these.
There's people there.
So here we have 4 of these. Interesting, huh? Some of them similar to each other, some of them different. And we have that helix, don't we, again? And the dove does represent love.
And rainbows. It might relate to the story of Noah in the Bible where there was a rainbow, and I think, was there a dove in that story? There was definitely a bird that flew out after the flood. Maybe it was a raven, but yeah, this does have an essence of sweetness and love and peacefulness, which I know are what the dove is supposed to represent.
What about the astrological signs? Anybody?
Well, there's peace all over the world. That's how I'm trying to interpret it. Peace encompasses the whole world.
Beautiful.
Maybe that could be Adam and Eve.
In the middle?
Well, these four signs are the first signs of the astrological sign that represents youth. The first 4.
Oh, great. On this one here?
Well, more or less. Yeah, Aries is the first one, and it represents, very early childhood. And then Taurus, Gemini, Cancer.
Can you tell us which ones are which?
Aries is the one on the upper right. Taurus is lower right. Gemini, lower left hand corner. Cancer is upper left corner.
Thank you so much, Carmen.
It'd be worth checking to see if the 4 women in the group have those 4 sun signs, but probably not. It just
that would be interesting.
I'm a Cancer.
And what about these?
This is the second set. When we enter more mature years. So Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio.
Oh, I'm a Virgo. Which one am I?
Over here, lower left.
Okay. And which one's Scorpio?
Scorpio's on the upper right.
Okay.
M. The one that looks like an M.
And they're still kind of in the personal realm, relationship realm of human existence or human life. And then when we go to the next 4, it's more universal. It's how we relate to the world at large.
I see.
These one are relations at a more personal level between couples, family, friends. At the next level, we ascend to a more humanity level, less personal.
And these are the astrological signs.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks so much for sharing that. This one has a lot of rich quality of hue, intensity of the reds. And I feel like the black on the bottom grounds it. Really gives it that energy to hold into the ground.
Yeah, and that circle feels to me like a container. So almost like a protection that happens that allows this other, this blossoming to happen.
The line is very interesting. It's like it goes from the lower right hand and it curves up and through the center and makes a little loop, and then it comes on the other side. And
does that remind you of Does that remind you at all of a snail? Like the way that spiral in a snail works? I mean, I see some element of that in there too.
Yeah, it's like a mathematical form called a cardioid shape.
Cartioid.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, Sarah, I want to say that I've put up 3 of your works from the Sustaining Arts Gallery next.
Okay.
And the reason I wanted to put them up to share with people is because after seeing Hilma af Klint's work, I appreciate your work even more. Because the way you're using your symbols and the subtle movement of color and the mesmerizing kind of feel of it's a very meditative look. This is from your ribbon series, as you know, so I'll just share with everyone. This is from Sarah's ribbon series. And Sarah works with the computer to make these images and puts them on beautiful metal, large and small, selling it as beautiful metal semi-glossy pieces. So let's look at a couple more. This one here is called Dot Mandala. It's from the Dot Mandala series. And there's also, to me, a very mesmerizing quality of the movement, but still a very symmetrical, geometrical, kind of feel. And then last, we have one from her Spiral Rex series, which is basically short for rectangle, Spiral Rex. So there's a combination of spirals and rectangles, and it really reminded me of the snails of Hilma. So if any of you would like to comment on what you're seeing with these 3, I'd love to hear.
Oh, just what you said, Julie. They're a very good contemporary, it's in this family of what Hilma is doing.
It really is. And I can appreciate, Sarah, the complexity and the meditative quality, really.
Well, it's kind of funny because, she talked about receiving from the higher masters or whatever, which I don't know if I'm doing that, but in a way, because the computer is actually making these images and not me, and I'm just, in a way, I'm sort of like receiving or allowing it to receive these mathematical forms.
But you're also setting it up to receive them.
Yeah.
So you're understanding that when you make certain choices as you're designing this, that certain things may happen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So you're definitely clearly in the picture as formulating them.
This one breathes. If you stare at it, it pulsates.
Yes.
The center one.
Yes.
It really does. It's alive.
Very nice. Beautiful work.
Wild.
Yeah, this one and the next one too.
The first or the last?
The last. That
also, there's a sense of 3-dimensionality and 2-dimensionality in this. Do you notice that shift?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to go now back to Hilma. These are the 3 pieces that were meant to be for the altar of the temple. Okay? And so basically, the altar piece number 1 is on the right. And number 2, I believe, is the one on the left. And then the middle one is number 3. In terms of the altar pieces that she made, they are quite large. If there was a person in this room, you would tell that they're very large. And these were made in 1915. I mean, she was a busy woman. She really put forth a lot of work. I have one more of, it's a close-up of the first one for the altar, which I thought you would enjoy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's so spectacular with the color and beautiful motion up toward that sun or whatever one would call that.
Yeah, it's like a road to the,
Beautiful feeling.
I like the fact that it's almost like it's not just looking up. I mean, this one, I'm talking about the three. The three, it's almost, once again, including like the down direction, the up direction, and the straight ahead. You know, you can almost look at it like the past, present, and future, or, you know, something that includes like three, you know, looking up, looking down, and just looking to the self or looking inward.
Right.
It's interesting that the one on the right in this photo, the circle has been cut off.
Right. That is interesting, isn't it? But it works from my point of view. Unless on the final, yeah, it's cut off in the final there as well. John, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say that in this picture, you can see how large they are. I mean, if those are 2-foot floor tiles, I don't know. But when I saw them in person in Stockholm, the big ones, what amazed me is that, I mean, and you mentioned that she spent a lot of time doing this. She made a lot, but how much time it would take to make something that large. And also the fact that here is something that nobody else, she doesn't know if anybody else is going to like it. She's doing it. She's just believes in it all on her own.
Exactly.
And it's up on an image that she doesn't know, you know, she didn't know if people were going to like it or not. She just believed it somehow all on her own. And that was impressive to me, that she had so much confidence that her inner life could be expressed like this, and that it was worth doing. And and also that they're so large that it's like a being. When you see, we're looking at these little images, but if you can imagine that on a wall that's like something like 8 feet high,
right?
It's really there. There's something fantastic about it.
Well, when the Guggenheim had that show, it was just blasting people out of the water. I mean, they're just like, they couldn't believe it. Like, wow.
Yeah.
It was just overwhelmingly beautiful and amazing.
Does that middle one have gold paint on the center circle?
That's something to look up. I don't know.
Julie, I have one question. I'm just curious. These larger ones seem to show a lot of confidence about what she's doing. But I'm just wondering why she did not want them to be public until after she was no longer alive.
I'll be very happy to share that. When she was living, the dominant perspective in the world was that men could become artists and women could not. And there were definitely people who respected Hilma's work, like Rudolf Steiner. He was involved in theosophy or
anthroposophy.
Changed it from theosophy to anthroposophy. Right. But basically what was going on at the time, Hilma saw that it was unusual for a woman to achieve honors and to be given a studio at a young age in Sweden, that was not done anywhere, like Italy or Germany or any of the other countries in Europe or America. I mean, women were not awarded for their creativity at that date in the early 1900s or late 1800s. So she realized that this profound kind of relationship that she had with spirit and universe was something that many people would not understand. And she also realized that the idea of abstraction and symbols was so foreign in the world around her. People were making beautiful pastoral scenes. They just couldn't comprehend. She could actually really see how far ahead of her time she was, which is pretty amazing. And John, as you're talking about her, I am also in awe that somebody could have such self-assuredness to do her life's passion and be with whatever the creator or creators were to her, and just to be satisfied with that, right?
Yeah.
This one here is called Buddha's Standpoint in the Earthly Life, number 3. At this point in 1920, Hilma was not communing with the spirits or being acting as a medium during the 1920s. She died in 1944, and she painted and worked with different mixed media for many years until possibly the last 5 to 10 years of her life. She may not have painted as much. However, she was also interested, you can see, in Buddhism, in different ways of looking at the world through different religions. And she died in 1944. She was nearly 82 years old in the aftermath of a traffic accident. So just want to say, if there are any last comments, then I appreciate them for this last one here. And then I'm going to share a few quotes to end tonight.
I wanted to share something. A contemporary artist, 10 years older than Klint, was Gaudí in Spain, the architect. They both were born and died in the same month. In other words, she was born in October, died in October. Gaudí was born in June, he died in June. Both a few days before their birthday died. They both died from injuries caused by automobile traffic accidents.
That's interesting.
Gaudí was hit by a trolley.
My goodness.
And I don't remember how Hilda was, but she died also of injuries from a traffic. And they both died very poor and penniless.
Really?
And they were both very spiritual, and they, through their mysticism, they reached this higher consciousness and serve as conveyors of a higher truth through their art. I thought it was very interesting.
That is very interesting. And I want to just mention that Gaudí was an architect who was worked with very fanciful forms.
And very organic, like she.
And very organic. Thank you for that, Carmen.
Yeah.
I quote Hilma. All the knowledge that is not of the senses, not of the intellect, not of the heart, but is the property that exclusively belongs to the deepest aspect of your being, the knowledge of your spirit. And then this last one I love as well. Life is a farce if a person does not serve truth. Well, everybody, it's been a great pleasure to share this evening with you. I look forward to seeing you at future webinars. I have these every 2 weeks. And I will be posting on Facebook, Abstract Art Behind the Scenes, when the next one is, and I welcome you to post whatever you like there to share art with each other. So until then, I will see you very soon.
Thanks,
Thank you
Julie.
very much. It was great. Thank you, Julie. Really enjoyed it.
The art of dreams, dreams of art, a closer world, a world apart, the color wheel of changing hues.